Thank you for watching today, folks. It's always a pleasure to be here. We're going to have an interview with Jeff Rath this morning, the legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project. I think you're going to enjoy that. And we'll be right back with more.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Well, we got 1 week to go until Christmas. How did you find the year? We'll be doing a year in review, of course, probably on December 31st, which is 2 weeks from today. But I wanted to just say, you could be watching this broadcast on YouTube. You could be watching it on Facebook. You could be watching it on X or Rumble. But we need subscribers. We need you to sign up. At the very least, like this station. That is rather essential here. And of course, this is how you hit the bell. Hit the bell, as Sasha the cat always said. And we appreciate your support. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can share this with your friends and family, and you can hype it. What we need to do is get beyond the algorithm. What we need to do is beat the forces that are trying to beat down independent media. You can do that by subscribing. Sometimes YouTube will unsubscribe you and you have to resubscribe. Please do that. Please give us a super chat or a Rumble rant. We appreciate it. December has been a lean month so far because we have been under attack by a lot of sources. We're going to keep fighting because there is so much at stake here in 2026. So many possibilities, so much potential, but I need your help and I need your support to follow through on all of those things, because that's what this is all about. Working together, supporting this station as a subscriber in any financial way you can, and doing everything to move forward together. I'm going to show the interview now. I'll probably interrupt it about halfway through to talk about the merchandise. But here we go. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. And it's a great pleasure to have Jeff Rath back on the show. And of course, Jeff is the legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project, which is a chief advocate for Alberta Independence. And Jeff, nice to have you back.
Well, thank you for having me on again, David. I always enjoy our conversations.
Yes, I do too. It just seems like a week doesn't go by here. We don't get more information here. I wanted to read this wording because this came as a bit of a surprise to me after we had this judicial interference, the judge saying Alberta does not have a right, it's unconstitutional to have a referendum on independence. And within a week, seems like we've got one. We've got the notice of intent for a citizen initiative petition information. And the proposed question, do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state? Now, I'm assuming that's exactly what you wanted to see, or is that?
Yeah, that's exactly what we wanted to see. We changed the wording slightly from our last question because we wanted, basically so that there's no question whatsoever. We wanted everybody to understand for 100% for sure that we're complying with Section 1, Sub 3 of the Clarity Act, which reads exactly that way. So we took the language directly out of the Clarity Act, so there could be absolutely no doubt whatsoever that our question complies with the Clarity Act, right? So
Right.
we've done that. We submitted our initiative proposal on, last week. Like literally, we were waiting outside of the of Elections Alberta for the minute we heard that the bill 14 was proclaimed. It was proclaimed at 11 o'clock last Thursday, and at 11:05, Mitch Sylvester and Eva Chipiuk from my office went in and filed the initiative petition statement of intent, because they've now brought in a 2-stage process. So then the next day we got a letter back saying that the initiative petition statement of intent has been accepted and received, and that we were now free to file our application, which we did on Friday. And now we're just waiting to hear back from them. But under the new legislation, they've got 7 days. So we'll have official word this Friday that we're good to, collect, signatures and move forward to get Alberta the hell out of Canada.
So are we going to see dueling referenda though, or this other
No,
question?
I can't imagine that. I mean, are you talking about that silly
Yeah.
question? Yeah, no, I can't see that happening. I mean, we have the right to go and gather signatures. Ours is a constitutional proposal. His is a policy proposal. So, I mean, I don't think his gets on a referendum ballot. Like, why would you have a policy question competing with a constitutional question unless you were deliberately trying to undermine, the clarity of the process? And, under the Referendum Act as well, if there's if there's a constitutional question that's been approved, it has to go forward as a standalone question, right? So, that's how we see it proceeding. We're going to have, from mid-January, probably 120 days to collect our signatures. So that'll be February, March, April, May. So that'll take us to, mid-May, end of May, for our signature collection. We're obviously very confident that we're going to have far more than 177,000 signatures on our question. We already have somewhere close to 300,000 pledges of people that have given us their names and addresses and contact information because they want to sign the petition, right? So we'll be moving forward with that, and then we're going to be moving forward to get as many other Albertans to sign, the petitions as well. Because I think, the more signatures that we have, and the more people that demonstrate their, intent to vote Alberta out of Canada, the better off we're going to be moving forward. So obviously, we're very excited about that. We've got 20,000 volunteers lined up and chomping at the bit to go forward to start gathering the signatures that are required. And, we're going to be moving forward with a massive signature campaign, that we're all very excited about.
I think the last time we were talking, we were referring to Premier Danielle Smith's interview with Radio Canada. And I guess she does these every year for the benefit of the francophones in Alberta. I don't think a lot of people are aware. There are francophones in Alberta. In the north anyway.
I'm actually a Franco-Albertan. My French family came to Alberta in the 1860s. My grandmother was delivered by a Cree midwife in 1896, not very far from Fort Saskatchewan. So our French roots in Alberta go back a very long way.
Well, and of course, in that interview, the translation was, I think, a bit skewed, because I went over it myself, and definitely CBC was screwing her with the translation. She's not envisioning going out there and stumping for the Federalist cause. This was really, really outrageous what this.
Yeah, and I've already apologized, for any comments that I made suggesting that that's what she said. I mean, I don't know why the hell I started believing CBC again after all these years of just discounting everything they say as a blatant lie generated by the Liberal Party. That having been said, in fairness to, those of us that were upset about this, I mean, Danielle kind of invites that on herself, because she continues to pound the table and say that she's a federalist. that I believe in a strong Alberta within a united Canada. Well, that's a little federalist slogan. So, I mean, if she wants to go on French radio or French TV and, repeat that slogan over and over again, she deserves whatever translation she gets. If she wants to go up and out and, and pretend to be a federalist or claim that she's a federalist, well, don't be surprised when people call you a federalist. Honestly, she was obviously misquoted, but at the same time, she invites it upon herself, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, I see your point there. Although I think she's going to be a little more balanced than we might have thought. But are you still going to are carrying through with your initiative to have a leadership review?
No, it wasn't. But it wasn't my initiative. And again, the Western Standard, I don't know what the hell their problem is lately, but they've been putting forward these hysterical headlines. I didn't say that I was proposing a leadership review. I said that there were a number of CA presidents that were angry enough to call for one because they didn't like the fact that Danielle was amending the Alberta Elections Act to say that only the leader of the party could sign people's nomination papers. So she effectively gave herself the same power that Justin Trudeau had, that if you weren't a good little boy or girl, or she didn't like you, and if you weren't voting her way in caucus, and if you weren't behaving yourself, she could just say, screw you. I don't care that you've been nominated by your constituents. I don't care that your CA board wants you to be, an MLA. I don't have to sign your nomination papers. I have a veto. And those amendments actually went through, and people are angry about it. And I just said some people are angry enough to maybe consider calling a leadership review. I wasn't calling for one. And if you actually watch the Bolton interview, I actually said that I thought it would be counterproductive at that time. And I hoped that cooler heads would prevail and that Danielle would do the right thing and not put those amendments in the legislation. But, for whatever reason, she thought she needed that power. So, the amendments went through. People are not happy about it. It's just another one of these examples of, of Danielle, wanting, more and more and more power, just like, her passing a motion at the UCP board in advance of the AGM prohibiting any debate or any resolutions on independence at the AGM. And we saw where that got her. Yeah. Whether she likes it or not, the UCP is a grassroots party. And anytime somebody behaves like a dictator, it annoys the base.
Well, I think it's interesting. I don't know if you caught the interview. I think it was late last week or early this week with three of the most mainstream media types. We had Andrew Coyne, we had Althea Raj, and we had Chantal Hébert.
Right.
And these, of course, are the most mainstream of the mainstream media on CBC. And I'm almost floored. I'm hearing Andrew Coyne say there's an authoritarian streak in this Mark Carney. Wow.
Wow.
And Chantal Hébert is saying, they've gone too far with making their cabinet ministers exempt from the criminal code. They can basically do anything. Althea Raj was not ready to quite go that far, but she was having some serious doubts too. So I'm thinking here that if Mark Carney has been a great salesman for why Alberta Independence should be viable, it just seems to me he can't get enough of the arrogance of the dictatorial authoritarian streak. And I don't know where he thinks he's going to push Albertans, and we'll talk about Saskatchewan in a minute because they seem to be getting on the same wavelength as well. But I think he's once again, the Westerners are going to look at this guy and say, this is just unvarnished dictatorial pursuit of power. And this guy is all about his own personal enrichment. Everywhere Mark Carney goes, Brookfield asset is not far behind.
Oh, 100%.
It's Brookfield strong, not Canada strong. So I don't even think, I think he's a lousy representative of the Federalist cause.
Oh, for sure. I've been saying for months that, if you look at what, how Mussolini himself described fascism that Mussolini invented, Mussolini says, really you should be calling fascism corporatism because really it's the state and large corporations working hand in glove to control society, right? So that's effectively what, Carney, and it's the whole WEF model, right? It's like, so-called stakeholder capitalism. And what's really disgusting about it is the stakeholders are the multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations, and we are the ones that have to pay for them, right? So basically, we're all being robbed blind by all of these, all of these fraudsters that are claiming the world is going to end because of climate change, and we all just have to siphon more tax money into the hands of central governments that can then subsidize all of these energy projects that only work with massive government subsidies that are guaranteed to be net zero, blah, 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 right? Like I had a buddy tell me the other day, this is actually a funny story. He said, he says, I can't even get so-and-so on the phone anymore. And I said, oh, why is that? He said, oh, he's involved in Pathways Alliance. You know that big carbon sucking machine? And he said, he's just got money blowing out of the vents of his office and he doesn't know where to put it all. He's so busy, grabbing all of this money and stuffing it in all of his pockets because he's involved in carbon capture, right? It's become a joke in Alberta, right? Like all of the people that want to, now want to get rich don't develop oil and gas. They find some way to attach themselves to this carbon sucking project, right? That's where the money's at. It's not actually in doing things that are productive, adding to the security of energy supply for the world, lowering energy costs so that we bring down inflation. No. All the money's in in another one of these World Economic Forum get rich quick schemes for all the billionaires.
Yeah, and well, I think it's very wise to point out what fascism actually was. I wrote a column about that one time when I was with the Western Standard, and somebody responded by saying, well, thank God somebody actually understands that fascism was a political ideology. It was an economic theory that was actually tried for 20 odd years in Italy. And of course, it was a totalitarian version of politics. George Orwell famously said fascism has ceased to have any real meaning. It just means something unpleasant. He said that towards the end of his life. But I think it's important to look at what fascism as an economic theory was, because Mark Carney, as you point out, that's exactly the kind of government, the kind of economy he's building. It's corporate cronyism. It's capitalism for a chosen few. And the rest are told what to do.
Oh, that's right. And only large corporations can make us competitive globally. So they want to wipe out. It's what they were doing during COVID, right? So we have rules for the big box stores and the big multinationals. And then we have rules for the mom and pops that crush the mom and pops, right? So they want to get rid of the small independent businessmen. They want to get rid of the mid-sized firms. They want to get rid of the medium to large firms and replace them all with all these big mega firms that literally thrive off of taxpayer subsidies. Because the more they centralize the power of the economy into the hands of the few, the easier it is to control everybody. Like they hate independent business because obviously if somebody is an independent business person and they've got millions of dollars in the bank or they're generating millions of dollars, they can go, I don't have to put up with this shit. I can just sell my business and I can leave, or I can do this or I can do that. I don't need to listen to the government because I'm not beholden to the government. I'm a free and independent human being, right? That's what they want to crash. And it seems to me that they're doing a pretty damn good job doing it.
Yeah. Well, I was on Neil Oliver's show today. We talked quite a bit. Actually, we talked a bit about Alberta Independence along the way, but we talked quite a bit about the scary talk that continues to be coming from the capitals of Europe, Berlin, Paris, and especially London. And of course, Great Britain, United Kingdom, however you want to call it. This is a country that's not capable of any kind of military adventures. It's got more admirals and battleships now. It's got more horses than tanks. It has become a has-been military. If the Royal Navy was once the greatest floating armaments in the world, it's become a shadow of that. But as Neil and I were discussing, we got Keir Starmer is talking increasingly about going to war with Russia. Like it's just like, well, why not? Let's see how it goes. Well, it won't go very well for anybody.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but I mean, King
We're going to get back to that interview in a minute. And what do you think Jeff is going to say about the effect of the incredible insanity, the war fever that's going to infect Canada? But we'll get back to that in a minute. It's, as I say, Christmas is a week away. Here's the merchandise.
Ho, 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 ho.
Who cares?
Okay, it's all there in the store. Have a look. Get something for your loved one, your family member today. It's a great way to celebrate Christmas. And we're going to go back to the interview.
Was even talking about it, and I even commented on it on my X page, and I said, wow, the last time the British Royals got involved in chatting about the possibility of war with Russia, that didn't end very well for the world. I mean, that's basically the Nicky Willie Georgie letters, right? Like leading up to World War I. You got all these royals writing one another back and forth, and it literally results in a world war. I mean, I don't know why Charles thinks he needs to stick his nose in this. It's bad. It's bad enough as it is.
It occurred to me today that we are going to be pushed into this war through Mark Carney because he's so joined at the hip to the UK, to the globalists in Europe. And I think this is a great argument in your favor, because there's very little the average Canadian is going to be able to do if Mark Carney says we're going to double the size of the military, we're going to conscript the bureaucracy, which I think is a joke. I mean, most of these people are capable of marching around the block.
I don't think you can actually go through basic training if you refuse to not work from home.
Yeah,
right.
That's it. But I think an independent Alberta would say, to hell with this. We don't want to go to war with Russia. And I think that's a great argument in your favor, because I think Canada would follow Carney into a war.
Oh, I think they're already talking about it. I mean, this moron is talking about increasing the size of like you mentioned it, and they want to do it by arming, the federal civil servants, a 300,000 person reserve force made up of, overweight women from Quebec. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
The typical federal. I guess they'll just make them all officers, so you'll have all these women, in the federal bureaucracy that are all directors and and above, because they're the only ones that speak French fluently enough to be promoted, right? They'll all be, majors and colonels and whatever it is, trying to, rolling around trying to keep up with the troops, right? It's gonna be something to see, I'll tell you.
But I don't think an independent Alberta would want to go to war with Russia. I think there'd be saner minds in the province.
Of course not. I mean, Alberta would be, a newly independent country. We'd be in the process of standing up our own armed forces in cooperation with the United States of America, right? And there's no way in hell that Albertans are going to go to war because, Mark Carney wants to join the EU or Starmer thinks it's a good idea. Like, I think, Albertans have too much common sense for that, right?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I want to touch briefly on the rising tide of support for independence in Saskatchewan. Now, I was surprised to see this, but as somebody pointed out to me, Saskatchewan's a much more rural province than Alberta. there's been an influx of a lot of woke lefties to Edmonton over the years, even the Calgary. So maybe that has certainly put a dent in what would probably be a 70% approval, in my estimation, for Alberta independence. But Saskatchewan seems to be the level of support for independence seems to be even higher there. And you say it doesn't surprise you. Why is that?
Well, I mean, just look at the name of the group in Saskatchewan that's that's moving things forward. It's the Saskatchewan Prosperity Project, right?
Oh.
So we've been helping get them set up, and we've been sharing our model with them and helping them organize town halls, and we've been meeting with them in Alberta. Mitch has even gone to speak at some rallies in Saskatchewan. I mean, we're helping them. We'd like Saskatchewan to come along with us. Can you imagine how powerful and wealthy that an independent Saskatchewan and Alberta would be if they were completely aligned, or if they joined as one country? I mean, I think Alberta's going to go first, right? But I don't think Saskatchewan will be far behind, right? So, and we're happy that they be our sister nation next door with their own government, if that's what they want, or we're happy for them to join us. I mean, we're in the process of developing a new constitution that would leave the door open for Saskatchewan to join if they wanted, or alternatively to be able to cooperate with Saskatchewan, as independent nations. So either way, we think it would be a wonderful thing.
Yeah. No, it's certainly, when I look at it in the broad light of day, it doesn't surprise me. I don't think we're going to see a concomitant rise of support for independence in British Columbia. I think the politics.
Well, you know what? If you went to the east side of the coastal range,
yeah.
Right? Over all of northeastern British Columbia would go. Everything basically from I'd say from Chilliwack over, would go. It would literally just be the lower mainland and Victoria that wouldn't want to come, right? I don't think the rest of the province of British Columbia is particularly happy with being governed by the communists. Either the communists in Victoria or the communists in Ottawa.
No, I think the province has gone so far to the left it's actually potentially creating a breeding ground for support for independence, and especially now with the uncertainty over whether or not you actually own your backyard, or if somebody else can just take it from you. Well, I think that's going to have a huge effect.
Again, I think a lot of the concerns in that regard goes a bit too far. Everybody seems to forget that both that the federal crown and provincial crown have always maintained the power of expropriation, and could always expropriate land to create Indian reserves, right? So they just never do it because there's enough crown land around to satisfy whatever the needs of First Nations are through whatever settlement. I don't think you're ever going to see fee simple land, being expropriated to fulfill First Nations claims in British Columbia. I've been practicing in that area my entire life. I mean, I just don't think that, I just don't see that as a realistic possibility. And I think that there's a lot of fear mongering in and around it, but I don't see it as being realistic. And I think it still hasn't gone to the BC Court of Appeal, and I'm sure the BC Court of Appeal, is going to have something to say about it as well. I think the judge in that one case went, got a little ahead of her skis in terms of some of the statements she made.
Well, I hope your assessment is correct. I'm not 100% certain it is, but I hope it is, because otherwise we're looking at the balkanization of a province.
Well, and again, you have to look at the facts of that case, David. It was dealing with a particular village. There was the Clatinas village on the shores of the Fraser, and what happened was that entire village site was illegally preempted. Under the auspices of the Crown of British Columbia. They allowed people to go in there, throw the First Nations people out of their homes, burn down their fishing stations, burn down their longhouses, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that entire piece of land was acquired basically by arson, right? In the same way, incidentally, that the British Columbia legislature was. The legislature was actually on an Indian reserve, and a bunch of the Imperial Knights of the Ku Klux Klan went through this reserve and burned down all the houses, and then the next week the government of British Columbia gleefully announced that this village was abandoned and they were now going to build on the site, build the legislature on the site. So what I tell people is, look, as long as your house or property isn't built on the site of an ancient arson, you're going to be fine. And there aren't that many places like that around in BC. That, Clutinas Village was one. The legislative grounds were another. It's everybody just needs to take a deep breath, and I'm sure the calmer heads are going to prevail.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on it because I know you have spent quite a lot of your legal history in this area. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
To say. Want to get to this proposal because I think I saw a X post from you this week saying great idea. Why are we worried about going through northern British Columbia? We can go through this. We can go through Washington State to get to the Pacific Ocean with
right.
oil. And Premier Danielle Smith has said, yeah, she likes the idea too. So I'm beginning to wonder, well, maybe we should be focusing 90% of our attention here and not 90% of our attention on this mythical pipeline.
Well, 100%. I mean, I just literally came back. I was, I'm still not home from Washington, D.C. I'm in Denver right now because the airport in Calgary was shut down today.
Yeah,
so I was literally, at the U.S. State Department yesterday, meeting with senior State Department officials. And I have to tell you, the fact that, that pipeline, was on the agenda of our discussions. And, you don't want to hear the real interesting thing about it. The Americans, first of all, are enthusiastic about the idea of Alberta independence. They see it as a very welcome way of getting rid of Chinese influence and control over the third largest oil field in the world. Because as far as everybody is concerned, the shutdown of the Alberta oil field, the tanker ban, the emission caps, all of those policies are made in China to just let me finish the point, David, to prevent Alberta Oil and Gas from providing a stable supply to Japan and Korea, which are against Chinese interests, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So the Americans are fully in favor of an independent Alberta and would support a pipeline to the U.S. Northwest. So, isn't it funny that Albertans can go to Washington, D.C., meet with senior officials at the highest level of the U.S. administration, and there's more support for a West Coast pipeline from Alberta in Washington, D.C. than there is in Ottawa. I mean, I think people need to let that sink in. And keep in mind, I mean, we're there as representatives of the Alberta Prosperity Project and the Alberta Independence movement. So we don't have, the authority to, sign trade deals or sign pipeline deals or whatever it is. I mean, we are there fact-finding on behalf of the Alberta Independence movement and people that want to vote for independence. So we can tell them and educate them as to what an independent Alberta is going to look like. And a lot of people obviously have concerns about Alberta being landlocked, and we want them as much as we can find out the degree to which, that would not be true in an independent Alberta by having these meetings, with U.S. officials. And I am telling you that the U.S. is enthusiastically in favor of Alberta independence, would support, another pipeline to the Gulf Coast that doesn't have to go through the Midwest hub. It would support a pipeline to the West Coast, as we just discussed. They would be, open, to or in favor of complete reciprocal free trade, so zero tariffs on both sides of the border, with zero restrictions on the free movement of labor from Alberta to the States and back and forth. Much like the early days of the European Common Market before the bureaucrats got involved, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Like, we would have a much better deal as an independent Alberta with the United States than we currently have with Canada. And we're dealing with people that are friendly, they're interested in what we have to say, they care about, the rights and freedom of the citizens of Alberta, and they're very respectful of, the rights of self-determination of the citizens of Alberta. They don't want to interfere in our process. They want, us to have a good referendum process. They want us to be able to, all Albertans to have a say in what their future is going to look like. And, they're there meeting with us and talking to us and providing reassurances in the background that the United States will be very supportive of a free and independent Alberta should Albertans choose that, right? So, we thought it was a phenomenal meeting. It was, we moved past, the initial introductory meeting we had, where we went and met with them to tell them what we were all about. Our last meeting things moved along a little bit further. This meeting, things went even further, right, in terms of our discussions and getting a really good sense of what the U.S. administration would be open to in the event that Albertans vote to become an independent nation state, independent for both Canada and the United States.
What did you think of Pierre Poilievre's motion to try to get the Carney government to essentially prove that it really wants to build a pipeline? I thought I'll just put this out there. I thought it was politically very stupid of Mark Carney to oppose it, because he's effectively given Pierre Poilievre the license to continue to accuse him of not supporting a pipeline for however many years we have to put up with Mark Carney in this position, somewhere between a minority and majority government. But I think it was politically very stupid. I think Carney could have essentially co-opted Poilievre and the Conservative Party by supporting that motion, saying we're all on the same page, we're all federalists together, we're all believing in this pipeline. But instead, he had to make it acrimonious, and I think politically, Poilievre came out on top of that. What did you think?
But I have to tell you, like Pierre putting that motion forward, Danielle was having a really hard time deciding that day who she was angrier with, me or Pierre Poilievre, right? Because what Pierre Poilievre actually did was prove exactly what I've been saying, which is that MOU is not worth the paper it's written on, right? And the reason it's not worth the paper it's written on is because the Liberals have no intention whatsoever of honoring their side of the deal. Like, they haven't lifted the tanker ban. They haven't, they haven't officially lifted the emissions cap. Julie Dabroussin came out of her hole in the ground immediately after the UCP AGM to clarify that when Danielle says that Danielle has freed the Alberta power grid up from net zero regulations, Julie Dabroussin says, oh no, we did not agree to that. We agreed that Alberta could come to us with a new proposal with how they can save more carbon in a different way. And if we agree, only if we agree, we will agree, like that, right? So, ever since the MOU has been signed, every time you turn, and then there's Carney continually repeating that everybody, should, be, calm down about the MOU, because he's negotiated a 600% increase to the industrial carbon tax, right? Yeah. So every time you turn around, Carney and the Liberals are making Danielle look foolish and making it look like that they've literally put one over on her and have made her look like the dumbest person on the entire planet, right? And then, Pierre Poilievre comes along and says, okay, well, let's just strip all the crap away from this MOU, the carbon sucking machine and, a pipeline if necessary, but not necessarily a pipeline. And let's just take it down to brass tacks. When's, shovels in the ground, there's going to be a pipeline. We want you to vote on it. This is the language from the MOU that's, crystal clear and does that. Well, of course the Liberals aren't going to vote for it. They've never intended it. And once again, Pierre Poilievre has succeeded in proving that MOU is not worth the paper it's written on, right? So, no wonder Danielle was mad at him. He pulled the rug right out from underneath her feet, right? Yeah. So, that's the problem. And now her big saving grace is to grasp on to what myself and Dennis Modry and Mitch Sylvester and a bunch of other people have been saying for the last couple of years. Why are we even talking about BC? Why are we talking about, Quebec and the rest of it? Why aren't you meeting with the United States and negotiating a pipeline deal to the West Coast? Just like Saskatchewan, did with Nutrient, right? I've been, every time I've been stumping for APP, all year at town halls. That's what I'm talking about. One of the benefits of Alberta independence is we just build a pipeline to the West Coast through the United States. We don't even have to talk to BC. And now Danielle, because she's understanding that the MOU is not going to work, I guess we have to be grateful for it, I suppose. But now, she's coming out and saying, oh, well, yeah, we could consider having a West Coast pipeline. And I understood from talking to a journalist that raised the issue with her that, it was almost him raising the issue with her after I'd raised the issue that gave her the idea that she should glom onto the idea, just to shut people up and make it look like she's doing something.
Yeah, like certainly, whereas a northern BC route is fraught with difficulties, and I think it's going to be a hell of a job to complete because of the opposition in the province, because of the environmental eco-terrorist groups that are going to oppose it at every opportunity. Why not consider a southern route and when it's welcomed and when it's not going to invite the same amount of acrimony from the people in the
there's
area.
existing pipeline rights of way that get you almost all of the way there. Or alternatively, you could build in the ditches of the existing highways that go, that through the highway right of ways that go all the way to the west coast. There's all kinds of ways to get a pipeline there through existing rights of way that aren't going across, Indian reserves, lands that are outside of the federal jurisdiction, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's no reason that the Trump administration couldn't get that done with an executive order, which we know Donald Trump is very good at signing.
Yes.
I don't know why, and I don't know why, why it is that people like myself and Dennis Modry and Mitch Sylvester and, LeVar Payne, a retired member of parliament from Medicine Hat, and the other members of parliament that are with our, that are part of our, U.S. liaison committee, Rob Anders, Eric Lowther, all these retired members of parliament, some of the names you may remember from your days,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And, why it is that, we have to go and meet with the United States to get these things going and initiate discussion, and why Danielle doesn't have a team of people doing this. I've been saying for years, and a former professor of mine wrote Kenny 6 years ago, why don't we have a minister of independence preparedness in Alberta, right? That's working on all of these things. Like, it wouldn't surprise anybody that one of the things that we're talking to the U.S. about is, helping them facilitate meetings, on a, the best way to put it would be on a feasibility study basis, to meet with the U.S. Treasury and to meet with J.P. Morgan to set Alberta up with a $500 billion line of credit. Why do we have to do that? Why isn't the government of Alberta doing that? Because think about Alberta, if it had a $500 billion line of credit secured with our oil reserves, it would be very easy to do. We wouldn't even necessarily need to draw on it. But think about the strength that would give Alberta negotiating with the federal government. It's like, instead of like the way negotiations have always gone with Alberta, oh, please, federal government, may we please have something nice? And the federal government says no. And if you keep insisting on having something nice, we're going to withhold your money from you, right? Which is pretty much how it always goes, right? But if Alberta had a $500 billion line of credit set up, backed, by the, good faith and credit of the United States of America, right? Think about the strength of our negotiating position when it comes time to talk to Canada and the rest of the provinces about leaving, right? Those are the types of things that we think it's important that the Alberta government discuss with officials in the United States. They shouldn't be leaving it to us to do, but, I guess, if they refuse to do it, independent citizens who can carry the banner forward and initiate these discussions on a feasibility basis.
Yeah, and that's very, very good observation. Why aren't they ready for this? If you look back, though, a year ago, right now, Danielle Smith was working from an entirely different set of assumptions and objectives, I think, because she was the only Canadian political leader invited to Donald Trump's inauguration. And she was meeting with Donald Trump on a regular basis at Mar-a-Lago. She was clearly indicating that she wanted a close relationship with the Trump administration. And I don't know why between then and now she suddenly thought that Mark Carney can be trusted.
It's baffling to me, right? It's completely baffling to me. Other than I know that there are a lot of billionaires in Alberta that have Danielle, and some who've left Alberta that are expatriates that have Danielle on speed dial, and a lot of them. And I'm saying this isn't things that I'm making up. Modry and I were invited to this goofy meeting that was chaired by Michael Binion, and we're not allowed to talk about the content of it, but under Charter House rules. But suffice it to say, a little cabal of Alberta billionaires thought it was important to haul Modry and I to a meeting to tell us what their plans were. Their plans are what they call reconfederation. So they want to use our movement to generate enough stress on Confederation and the threat of Alberta separation so that they then, can swoop in and, be the adults in the room to negotiate, appropriate amendments to the Constitution to make Alberta happy. And we just flat out told them, it's like, look, Alberta Independence is an express train going down a track. You're either on board with it or you get run over. But don't tell us, insult us by inviting us to a meeting to tell us that, that you don't think that, that you don't want independence and that your idea is just to let us get far enough ahead that you can then push us aside and, along with Danielle Smith, negotiate a better place for Alberta within Canada. We're done with Canada, right? And those are the people that are in Danielle's ear, right? Michael Binion was on Danielle's, stupid what's next panel meetings. So, when people ask me why I'm annoyed with Danielle, that's why I'm annoyed with Danielle. These are the people that are advising her, and I know this firsthand. So, she's not for independence. She's in bed with the reconfederationists who, at the end of the day, want to completely undermine the independence movement and take over so they can then negotiate some sort of renewed federalism with Mark Carney. We do not want renewed federalism with Mark Carney. Let me be completely clear about that. I mean, our movement wants Alberta out of Canada, period.
Yeah, no, that's a poor cliche. Renewed federalism. We've heard that
the West wants
for decades.
Hey, and I have to say, Preston Manning was at that meeting. I was sitting right next to Preston at that meeting, your old boss, right? The West wants in, right? And I mean, and Jay Hill was there, and
Jay Hill.
Oh my God! And all of these people were basically telling Dennis and I that we were a couple of dangerous loose cannons that were, going to destroy Canada and destroy Alberta, and that we needed to be much more responsible in terms of what we were doing, and blah 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 blah. Like it was one of the most bizarre meetings that I ever attended, and it pissed me off even more because it was at the Ranchman's Club, which has been my club, like was my own club that I've been going to for 30 some odd years.
Oh wow.
So to go to a meeting at my own club and be lectured to by a bunch of people that do not have the best interest of Alberta at heart and are only concerned about their own bank accounts and their own businesses was a bit much for me. Yeah.
I guess my final question, it's a bit odd to end on this one, but I promised that I would raise this. The Canada Pension Plan has been recently equated to a Ponzi scheme because it will never deliver half of what it promises. And Mark Carney has been accused of not only playing it fast and low with the Canada Pension Plan, but with public pension plans, trying to use this money in a way that I would think is marginally, at least, illegal.
Well, hang on. Let me jump in on that.
Go ahead.
If you read the Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security Act, pledging, hypothecating, borrowing against, lending against, or appropriating any funds from that account for any purpose other than the payment of pensions is illegal. So every time he opens his mouth to talk about how, there's this wonderful asset in the Canada Pension Plan that can be used as collateral, he is proposing something that is illegal and contrary to the existing statute. So for him to do that, he has to sort of bury that in the bottom of an omnibus bill somewhere and to try to sneak it through. I wouldn't put it past him to do it, but yeah, I mean, that's where that's at. The other thing is, don't forget that Chrystia Freeland, who has a very close relationship with Mark Carney, right? Was shooting her mouth off when she was finance minister, about accessing Canadians' home equity and Canadian savings because we all need to make sacrifices, blah, blah, blah. So, Chrystia Freeland, is looking at people's pensions, looking at their savings, looking at their home equity, because how else are they going to pay for the fact that they've got all of this out of control spending? They have not retrenched the size of the bureaucracy that Trudeau doubled when he was in office, right? And, 40 billion for an electric choo-choo train, 200 billion for, to rearm Europe. I mean, every time you turn around, Carney's, writing checks with his mouth that his bank account can't cash. So, what are they going to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to literally, it's a time of sacrifice and blah, blah, blah. They'll bring in special taxes and raid everybody's bank accounts. And, we know Mark Carney likes freezing people's bank accounts. I don't think it's very far away from him looting them, right? So, all of those things are very problematic and people should be worried.
Well, you anticipated precisely where I was going with that. That's exactly it. So I'm sure an Alberta pension plan would be a lot more secure. And, having read your economic statement, your economic documents, I don't think there would be any need to play these political games with the pension plan that the federal government does. So anyway, Jeff, it's been so nice talking to you tonight. I hope you're able to get home to Calgary tomorrow.
Well, I'm hoping to be home before Christmas.
Well,
I think we'll be okay tomorrow and the roads will be clear. But oh my God, my wife was sending me pictures of the blizzard that hit the airport. It looks like a nightmare back home right now.
Oh yeah. Well, I know what the weather can be like there. So thanks, Jeff.
I'm glad we could catch up while I was on the road, and thank you for having me on. And we'll look forward to our next the next time when we can get together and I can update you on what we're doing. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff, and we'll be in touch.
You
Bye
bet.
for now.
Okay, over now.
And of course, it's Jeff Rath, Alberta Prosperity Project. And that was Jeff Rath. And thank you for joining me again this morning for that interview. I want to share something with you this morning, which I think is just incredible. Just incredible. And let's have a look here. Remember Pablo Rodriguez? Do we remember Pablo Rodriguez? Yes. He's resigning as the leader of the Liberal Party. Breaking: Quebec Liberal leader Pablo Rodriguez resigns amid ongoing crisis. Wonder where Rodriguez learned all these corrupt practices. He served as a federal Liberal MP and a member of the Liberal Party Canada caucus for a total of 16 years. Yeah, there he goes. And yes. So of course he's accused. This is all allegedly. But what is he up to? And remember this. Pablo Rodriguez was the Minister of Heritage. And that was where all of these initial censorship bills, the Internet Safety Act, and all of this stuff was under Heritage. And Pablo Rodriguez was part of that. So is there some poetic justice here? Guilbeault has resigned as a cabinet minister. Pablo Rodriguez is in deep shit. Excuse my language. Very, very interesting. Keep your eye on this, folks, because it's not going to get better for Pablo or the Liberal government. Keep your heads up. Don't lose faith. We're going to be back again tomorrow with more of the news you need to know. And believe me, it ain't over till it's over, and we're fighting back. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I'm going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Kraton, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.